Hello. Today we're going to be reading an excerpt from Lessons from Our Ancestors, Uncovering Ancient Wisdom, written by Raksha Dave and illustrated by Kimberly Clinthorne Wong. First, the introduction. Every object tells a story. Archaeology is the study of people through the evidence they left behind, from buildings and tools to bones and teeth. Linking all these things together is like doing a jigsaw puzzle, helping archaeologists like me recreate how people in the past lived. You might think archaeologists are only interested in precious objects such as jewelry or coins, but often the most common everyday items, like bricks or food remains, can tell us so much more. This book draws on 50 objects to offer fresh perspectives on people from our past who can teach lessons that are valuable to us today. They'll have already heard of formidable gladiators from ancient Rome, vicious Vikings from the Norse homelands, and a pharaoh named Tutankhamun who ruled over Egypt. But what about the ancient cities in Turkey where gender equality flourished, the benevolent king from India who cared for the disadvantaged, or the Inca citadel that was built on migration? We're going to travel back in time to 14 civilizations and cast a spotlight on forgotten histories and misrepresented stories. We'll celebrate equality, inclusivity, and sustainability across the ancient world, and I hope that by learning important lessons from our ancestors, you'll be inspired to build a better future. After all, what legacy will you leave for future archaeologists to uncover? Raksha Dave, archaeologist and broadcaster. Australia's first people were conservationists. Australia is home to the oldest continuous culture in Earth and a culture which protects and preserves the environment. When, around 40,000 BC, were Lake Mungo in Australia. Over 40,000 years ago, the first peoples of Australia sailed across the ocean from Asia to settle in Australia. At a time when most of the world was locked in ice, the ancestors of the Pakantisha, Muta Muta, and Nyampa thrived. All three groups came together at Lake Mungo and the Willandra Lakes region, and just as the land looked after them, they in turn cared for the land. This is still the case today, as the Pakanti, Muta Muta, and the Nyampa people continue their close connections to the land at Lake Mungo, and the fact that their cultures have thrived for so long is a testament to their sustainability. The ancestors were caretakers of the environment. They protected their land, respected wildlife, and made use of knowledge passed down through the generations. Fire pits were dug with digging sticks and were made from the same reasons that people use them today. To cook food and keep warm, they were built in a variety of ways. Dome-shaped tents, known as gunyas, were built from sticks, bark, and sometimes leaves. They were cleverly dotted along the lake's shorelines in the best position to gather food. Indigenous Australians left behind the oldest footprints ever known in Australia. Tracks tell amazing stories, like the fact that the foragers included all members of a group: women, men, and even children. Although they were limited to foods occurring naturally in the area, the ancestors of the Pakanta, Mutai Mutai, and Nyampa knew exactly when, where, and how to find anything edible. They hunted for fish like perch and moray cod using handheld nets made of woven plant fibers. The objects that reveal Lake Mungo's story. Footprints. Approximately 500 ancient footprints have been recorded in the clay pans at Lake Mungo. These footprints are the oldest found in Australia and the world's largest set of Ice Age footprints. They unearth the story of how humans have visited, foraged, hunted, and lived around Lake Mungo for millennia, 1,000 years. When the footprints were uncovered, Mary Papin, a Mutai Mutai elder, said walking alongside the footprints was like walking with a family group today. They're the same people. They believe the prints had been revealed to let the rest of the world know how clever our people really were, living and surviving in their environment. Fishing nets. By weaving together plants that grew around the lake's edge, hand-held fishing nets were constructed at Lake Mungo. Plant fibers were stripped into pieces, twisted into yarn, and laced together to create tight webbings to catch passing fish. The net is one of the oldest fishing tools in the world. Middens. Middens are the remains of meals, similar to piles of trash. They can tell archaeologists about the diets of people from the past. The bones and shells found in the middens at Lake Mungo reveal that the ancestors of the Bakanti, Mutai Mutai, and Yampa ate freshwater animals, including perch, moray cod, mussels, and crayfish. Archaeologists can tell that these middens belonged to people because they were arranged in ways that could not have occurred naturally. Grindstones. Grindstones are essential to turning seeds into flour for baking bread. Baking was thought to have first developed in Jordan's earliest civilizations, but it was actually indigenous Australians who started the practice almost 10,000 years previously. Stone wasn't easy to find around Lake Mungo, and so this precious resource was likely to have been traded or collected, showing us an incredibly early form of bartering. Mungo Man. In 1974, a geologist discovered Mungo Man, the oldest known human remains in Australia. After the site was excavated, Mungo Man's bones were lifted from their burial place and taken to the National Museum of Australia in Canberra. This caused great distress to Mungo Man's descendants, as they were not consulted nor asked for permission for the remains to be removed. Mungo Man was returned in 2017 after decades of campaigning, and was welcomed back in an emotional ceremony of dance and song. The story serves to remind archaeologists to always consider the rights of the deceased, their relatives, and the community to which they belong. Today, archaeologists stick to a code of ethics, a list of rules to make sure that human remains are respected and treated with dignity.